I heard this from a sprint coach, a European sprint coach named JB Morin. He said that beginner and intermediate athletes are like full tubes of toothpaste. You can squeeze anywhere on the tube and you'll get something out, right? And he said elite athletes are like an empty tube of toothpaste. You have to squeeze in the exact right spot to get any toothpaste at all. And I think that's exactly what it is, right? You have to know your athlete really well to squeeze in the exact right place to get what you want out.
Hi, Will. It's my pleasure to have you on Evidence Strong Show. If you could briefly introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show. I know we've gone back and forth, and I love what you're doing, and I love the information you're presenting to a weightlifting audience, and so it's really great to connect with you finally. I'm a weightlifting coach. I was like a lot of weightlifting coaches. I was a weightlifter first for a long time, and I was an athlete prior to that, like finding weightlifting. I think that story is not atypical where you had one sport, you move into weightlifting, all that kind of thing. And so my background was like track and field. I was a junior weightlifter as well. So I first started weightlifting way back in 1997 was my first meet. So it's been a long time, and then got into track and field and got into coaching, strength and conditioning. And that's like maybe the big thing is once I got into coaching, strength and conditioning, we would use the Olympic lifts for athletic performance really, really effectively. And I started having some kids that were washing out of sports where they would play, soccer in the American sense. They would play soccer, and then they would maybe be too small to play soccer, but they could hang clean a lot, right? So I started directing some athletes into weightlifting competitions. And yeah, that's kind of how I started coaching weightlifting maybe 12 or 13 years ago now as a big part of what I was doing. 5 years ago, I sold my strength and conditioning business and just started doing weightlifting coaching. And now I coach athletes of all ages in weightlifting in all types. I'm probably most well-known at this point for coaching Mary Theisen-Lappen, who is a American super heavyweight weightlifter. She's an American record holder in the clean and jerk and an Olympic hopeful and contender, for the super heavyweight class for the United States. So that's the real brief. I'm also a dad. I'm a parent of 3 young boys. I'm a husband. I have a wife and family, and so we're just doing all sorts of stuff.
Awesome. So I invited you to talk about elite weightlifting specifically, but to make it, of course, you have experience, you have examples of athletes you have been coaching and are coaching at the moment. So if we could start with maybe what would be your definition of an elite weightlifter?
Yeah, certainly. And so elite weightlifting, to me, those athletes that are competing internationally and regularly, right? Not just not even just trying to make an international team, which we think about a lot, like how can I make this team? How can I make this team? But if your regular meets are on an international stage, you're what I would call an elite athlete, particularly if you're from a nation like the United States that has a very high level international team.
All right, so we have definition out of the way. Elite weightlifter is the weightlifter that regularly competes internationally at the highest level, so AB sessions.
Yeah.
So this is the elite weightlifter. Now, how the training and coaching from your perspective would differ of coaching elite weightlifter versus lifters from other levels?
Yeah, I think the calendar is going to look a lot different. An elite weightlifter has pretty regulated calendar with very particular peaks that we're going to look for. And that calendar is a 52-week calendar. Mary, for instance, and Alexis, who's a Canadian lifter that I coach, they have a 52-week calendar that I plan out, and we're looking months and months and months ahead because we know what that calendar is going to look like. And so that would be maybe the first difference is there's just an opportunity and a necessity really to plan much further in advance. I think that most weightlifters that I coach, we're usually in a 12 and 16 week calendar where, we have this rhythm in the US where we have North American Open 1 is in March, Nationals are in June, North American Open 2 is in September, and the American Open final is in December. And it's, they're almost 12 weeks apart exactly. And so a lot of they're really good national champion, national level lifters, their calendar is 12 and 16 weeks in length. And we might pick just 2 of those. So it's 20 something weeks in length where they're peaking for nationals and the American Open final. final. One way to look at it is the calendar. And the more elite, the longer that calendar is going to be. And then as you get, kind of newer and newer in the sport, that calendar gets shorter and shorter. And you can think of that almost on the scale in which you would see someone PR, right? Like an elite lifter might have an opportunity to PR once a year, or something like that. Mary hit a couple PRs last year, but they're far apart. Whereas the newer lifter, maybe a little more seasoned lifter, they're going to PR every block, every 3 months or something. When I really peak them out, they're going to bust through. Whereas the really new lifters hitting a PR every month, and the brand new lifters PRing every week or every day that they come in. And so, if you think about the scale in which someone's going to hit their PRs, achieve a new record, that would be a good indication of what their calendar looks like and how long, what the program planning really needs to be. The brand new kids that I have coming in who are 12, 13 years old, 11 years old, every time they come in, they just pour more weight on. And it's not like we don't say, hey, you PR'd, but that's just what it is. Like, okay, last time you did 25 kilos, today you're going to do 26. It's like, you don't even think about it, that kind of thing. And then as they go on, those things get, and the program is the day. It's like snatch day, because we're going to work on the snatch all day long. And I can't really plan on what exercise you're going to do. Is that going to be from the power position, below the knee, above the knee, whatever? I'm going to watch what you're doing and pick the best way to ingrain the skill that I want that day. And so, I'm going to have, it's almost like a daily program for them. Then they start, I start thinking about the weeks how we're going to rotate. And then we start rating months at a time. And then you start thinking about, meso cycles and macro cycles and stuff like that. So, beginners, the rate of change is just so fast that, it's days and weeks. Advanced, elite, it's months and months and years, right? That we start thinking about scale.
Could you elaborate a little bit on because competition at elite level, competition schedule is given. So and more than that, for the Olympic hopefuls, you don't even have a choice to skip. You can skip in the quad. In this one, you could skip 2 events out of 7. So it's a lot of events. So how you go about that?
Yeah, that's probably the frustrating thing about the calendar for qualification for the Olympics this time, especially for a female in the United States, was such that every single weight class at the start of qualification had at least 2 women who were ranked in the top 10 in the world. They were all just, kind of at each other's heels and at each other's feet, pushing each other and all that kind of stuff. So you really couldn't take anything off. So we had some marker competitions last year, which were Cuba, which was Grand Prix 1, and Doha, which was Grand Prix 2, that I thought would be the best opportunities to lift really heavy. And so those were the places we intended to lift the heaviest. Both of them came almost to fruition. Doha did happen as the heaviest. And then Worlds, we wanted to go compete really well. So we were kind of thinking like, this will be your peak shape, Grand Prix 1, Grand Prix 2. Worlds was in the middle. We want to be a really good competitor, and we would have like a taper, but it wasn't a full-on like planned competition because we knew we'd have to keep going just a little bit. So it was definitely not optimal. We were kind of on that 12-week thing. It was like 12 weeks, repeat the whole year.
Okay. Do you have any comments on, maybe not personally your athletes, but on dealing with injuries on the schedule like that?
For certain, that's the number one thing honestly, for any athlete, one of my goals or one of my sayings I always tell my athletes is never do anything today that will sacrifice our ability to train tomorrow. Basically the idea, my team is called 1 kilo. And the idea for me is just, it's really powerful because weightlifting's so cool because we can just add a kilo at a time. And we do that enough and we have this huge change. We will have these huge changes with just little incremental improvements. It doesn't always have to be your snatch and clean and jerk, but it can be your squat. It can be your RDL. It can be your pull, whatever, those little incremental improvements. So we never want to do anything on a day that would sacrifice our ability to train next day. So in that big schedule, the number one thing was never put ourselves in a position to get hurt. That's like number one, like always pay attention to what's going on. Never take lifts that are, that are hopeful, right? We don't want to like hope we're going to make it. We want to have confidence that we're going to make it because we don't want to put ourselves in a bad position. But coming back from injury, that's a whole different animal. And that's just, for me, finding whatever it is, whatever quality that we can improve during that period of time, and going full bore towards that quality, while also really getting into the rehab any specific injury. So upper body injuries, what can we do with lower body that would allow it, allow us to train really hard? Do we need safety bar because maybe we have a wrist issue or a shoulder impingement or something like that? And just looking for every opportunity that we can find to train around that thing that is holding us back in some way.
Awesome. Would you have any comment on recovery practices in elite weightlifters?
Yeah, that's, great book is Atomic Habits. If you've ever read it or anybody listening's read it. And there's just this great idea of in Atomic Habits, it's like if you want to be something, if you want to be a successful weightlifter, right? A great weightlifter, are the things that you are doing representative of what you think of like a great weightlifter would do? And so that's along the lines of, I believe that an elite weightlifter would eat really well all the time. They would get 8 hours of sleep every night, all that kind of stuff. And that's really like how we think about it. We think about, okay, what do we think an elite weightlifter should do? Now let's do all of those things to the best of our ability. So to me, obviously, recovery practices start with the food we choose and the amount of rest we can get at night. And then to me, the next level of that is just like a really great team of people who do body work. We have a great massage therapist that we work with in town, our like gym area. We have a great physical therapist that are both just excellent. So those are probably number 1 and 2 is just making sure that we have excellent bodywork people, whether it be massage or physical therapy or chiropractic or whatever, that are also know the sport. So those are probably my number ones. It's obviously food, sleep, and then really, really great bodywork. And then beyond that, like anything you can get your hands on, whether that be sauna or cold plunge or red light therapy, anything that allows you to just take that one extra little step. Piros Dimas said to me one time that like some people look for one thing that would make them 20% better. And he goes, I looked for 20 things that would make me 1% better. Right. So, and I think that's the way an elite weightlifter.
Awesome. Oh, technique. Would you have, this is a big topic always. So would you have any comments on technique of elite weightlifters?
Yeah. I think that when you look at technique, one thing that can be a little bit of a fallacy if you're a newer weightlifter is to watch elite weightlifters and try to mimic what they do, right? Because what you don't have if you're a newer lifter, you don't have, I think that when I started lifting in 1997, we had Milo Training Hall DVDs and they didn't look very good. And I would see Piros Dimas doing a power clean at 200 kilos or something and putting the bar onto the rack. And it was kind of grainy and I couldn't really tell what he was doing. But now it's great. You have this access to YouTube, but you could decide that you don't like Shi Ji Yong's technique, you like Liu Xiaozhen's technique, and you'd rather watch Liu Xiaozhen videos, and you'd be, you could do it. You could say, I like Rahmat from Indonesia's technique better than Shi's, whatever. You have this almost unlimited resource and ability to go watch weightlifting video, look at elite athletes, and try to model yourself. But I really do think that that's a little bit of a fallacy because we don't know what they looked like when they started lifting 10 years ago. There aren't videos of, I keep saying Shi Ji Young, where there aren't videos of Maddie Rogers, when she was learning how to lift. There aren't videos of Dmitry Klokov when he was learning to lift. There are videos of them at their peak a lot or now. And now they have all sorts of, elite weightlifters have all sorts of technique flaws that they get away with due to their amazing talents, right? Because certainly one thing that makes an elite weightlifter is they have really high percentage of fast twitch muscle fibers. They're extremely strong. They are, any number of physical qualities that I don't have, or, the masters weightlifter who I coach doesn't have. So they are able to get away with things that are maybe an error. I think looking at elite weightlifting for specific technical things is really, really misleading. But what we can find is really general stuff. They're really good. There's a great kinematic study, I think from 2011 Asian Championships, where they looked at women who are elite versus sub-elite, and the elite lifters had the same back angle at liftoff that they did when they passed the knee, and sub-elite lifters had varying back angles, right? Where they'd lift off with one and they'd have a more vertical back angle or a more horizontal back angle when they'd pass the knee. But the elite lifters maintain that. Elite lifters have what I would call a ground strike that happens under, when their shoulders are still on top of the bar and not behind behind, because when you have a ground strike, exception obviously being like someone like Carlos, but when your ground strike needs to happen beneath the bar, like with your shoulders on top of the bar, for the bar to have the best vertical projection, if your shoulders are already behind the bar, you're going to see the bar deviate and go forward. So you'll see stuff like that I think is really good. I think that elite lifters, you'll see, typically have a much better stiffness under the bar and the jerk, where they translate the downward energy, that stretch reflex that they create there. They are better at getting back out of that position. Their position doesn't deform as much, so they have a really high like stiffness quotient at the bottom of the lift, at the bottom of the dip. So you see those sorts of things that are really, really universal. I say universal, 95, 98, 99% of elite weightlifters. And so that's what you want to look at when you think about an elite weightlifter. You want to look at what are the general things that they do rather than the specific things that they do.
Awesome. Would you have any things you think are underestimated or overestimated with elite weightlifters?
Okay, there's this old kind of saying or thought that passes through the internet, which is American weightlifters aren't as good as European or Asian weightlifters because they don't, their technique's not as good. But alternatively, people say that their strength isn't as high. I think that what I have seen in international weightlifting is there isn't like a universal program, right? Even a country like China, all the athletes are doing different stuff. There's definitely multiple camps, right? And they're kind of training individually, but maybe under the guidance of a coach. So they do similar, but not the same. I don't think that the key is technique. I don't think that the key is strength. It's like the optimal play of technique versus strength, or technique and strength, and that a coach or high performance director, whomever, is directing that really well for an individual athlete. So this athlete needs a little more strength, so we're going to work more on this. This athlete needs more elasticity, so they work on that sort of thing. This athlete needs better technique at the top of their, second pull. You see them working on that. So I don't think that there's like there is some system, but there's not like a universal thing that's happening internationally that makes any country specifically better than any other country right now, right? I think that weightlifting is much more individual at the international level than what we have been led to believe in the past.
So maybe that's how it is. Maybe at the lower levels, or recreational athletes can improve with, I don't want to say general, but more universal programming and guidance, and then elites have to double down on the strengths they have, and they have to cover up for weaknesses they cannot fix, be it due to genetics or some other previous injuries, for example. So it has to be very, very individual to lead them to maximal performance.
Yeah, there's a really great, I heard this from a sprint coach, a European sprint coach named JB Morin. He said that beginner and intermediate athletes are like full tubes of toothpaste. You can squeeze anywhere on the tube and you'll get something out, right? And he said elite athletes are like an empty tube of toothpaste. You have to squeeze in the exact right spot to get any toothpaste at all. And I think that's exactly what it is, right? You have to know your athlete really well to squeeze in the exact right place to get what you want out, right? I can't just throw anything at them. But honestly, with a younger kid who's just learning to lift, if they back squat more, they're going to snatch more. If they bench press more, they're going to snatch more. If they wake up and have an extra hour of sleep, they're going to snatch more, right? So you can do almost add any positive stimulus to them and they're going to come out on the other side. And that toothpaste tube gets a little empty and you got to squeeze in a better spot every time until it's almost empty, and you got to just get the exact right spot. So I think you're exactly right.
Okay, so would you have, we'll be wrapping up slowly, would you have 3 qualities a elite weightlifter should have, you think? You can't say genetics because no one can work on that.
I can say there. I don't know if I'll come up with exactly 3, but I would say one thing so I always think about elite weightlifters live and die like through competition. It's not, I get excited because I go lift and I lift more in training. And that's actually the life of most people who lift weights, right? They're most of what they think about is how am I going to train today and how's this and all that kind of stuff. But elite weightlifters, it's all about what happens on the competition platform. And there's a couple things that I think are really, really important is competition tactics, right? Really good weightlifters usually have coaches who have good tactics. So that coaches in that sense can put their athlete in the best position to succeed. And it's something that I take a great deal of pride in, is trying to have very good tactics that advantage my athlete on the platform. So, whether that's managing the clock, Mary is a really great clean and jerker. A lot of times she finishes meets as the only person clean and jerking. So, how can I use her changes the best way possible, where I cross a 0 or a 5, so they have to even take the collar off, so I get an extra 30 seconds because they're changing plates. That's something that we think about. Or knowing, having enough research beforehand to know the jumps that her competitors might take, so that I can, manipulate the changes to put her in a good spot to maybe take someone's clock or something like that. So that's one thing elite weightlifters have. These won't be particularly physical. The other one is they have really excellent mental toughness or focus or whatever. And one of the best things from a sports psychologist that I've ever heard is named Dr. Rob Bell. He says that focus is king, but refocus is queen. And so, like, when you are lifting, you have to focus, but there's always going to be something that pulls your focus. And that could be, that's not always negative. A lot of times, like, people think about, how do I bounce back from a miss? That's focus and refocus. But another one is, how do you bounce back from a great success, right? If you go 3 for 3 in the snatch and end up with a PR in the snatch, the temptation is to hop and skip off the platform and be very excited for yourself. But now you've lost your focus on the clean and jerk. And oftentimes you'll see someone have a great snatch day and then not refocus for clean and jerk, and then they go out and have a subpar clean and jerk day. So really great athletes have a great ability to focus and then refocus. So I think tactics are super important. And then I think the sports psychology piece is super important. And the kind of bouncing off that sports psychology piece, maybe a third thing to give you 3 and round it out, is that their ability to compartmentalize training. And because training isn't always positive, training really is like, you're going to feel crummy on purpose, right? I write the program and know what weeks my elite athletes are going to feel crummy, because I know how much work that they've put in and when their body is like going to be really fatigued. And they're able to compartmentalize that and also think about that in the right terms and know that, yeah, if you felt good every day, you wouldn't be pushing yourself. You by nature aren't pushing yourself hard enough to have that great result in competition. So, none of those are physical qualities, because I do think at the elite level, it is those 1%, those little tiny things that we can find that create advantages. If you talk about a beginner athlete or a master's athlete, those are going to be really physical qualities. It's going to be, strength. It's going to be elasticity or, speed or any of these number of things. But at the elite level, it really is those really, really tiny things that can create little itty bitty advantages.
Awesome. That's a great summary. So 2 short questions to finish. The first one is, what is your favorite color?
Oh, I'm going to go with green.
All right. Any particular green?
I would say a lot of different shades of green, but probably, just a really nice, bright green is great for me, because maybe it's just me dancing in the middle, because blue and yellow are great as well. So
awesome. And the last question is, where people can find you online if they want to ask question or just follow what you and your athletes are doing?
Yeah, certainly. Just I'm on Instagram, and that's where I'm most active, at Wil Fleming, and my name is Wil with 1 L, because my real name's Wilson. And then at 1kilo.wl for my weightlifting team. So 1kilo.wl. So yeah, follow us on either place. Instagram is where I'm going to be most active, and I try to get in my DMs if you ever have questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, it was great to be on the show. Thank you so much. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.